Welcome to Home Dad Chat, brought to you by the National At Home Dad Network. My name is Brock,
My name is Danny.
and we are here to talk about life as stay at home dads. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
No, I don't want much. I even love handmade crafts made of macaroni. Come on now, you should know me. Times I might eat too much. No worry about my weight, got the dad bod rocking on me. Sketches on my feet, cargo shorts look good on me. I'm a dad, that's what I do.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Hope you're having a great day. It's been a week of all kinds of chaos, but I'm still here, and so are you. And so that's a good thing because we
That's
all
what
go
counts.
through. Yeah, exactly, right? We we live to fight another day, as they say in Waterboy.
Yep.
But yeah, man, I mean, it's I don't know. Every week is new and different, but at the same time, like exciting. So, how you been, man?
I've been okay. Stressed, anxious, depressed, but yeah, it's just a lot of stuff going on. And honestly, there was a lot from after the convention. Just one being so up for so long and busy and working and laughing and just having a great time and all that expenditure of energy and stuff. And then just I have to take an inhale now, and that's kind of where I was at. Like I said earlier, I think I took the Monday after the convention off and stayed in San Antonio and just like relax and breathe and just try to get myself back together before I have to come back here. And getting it's like an oasis. The convention's like an oasis. You're in a place where everybody gets you, everybody understands you. You got a great community. You have, things going on that are fun. You get to play games or try stuff or do whatever. You're on vacation. And it's really the only vacation that I think we can get as an at-home parent because we don't take our kids to the convention usually. Some
Right.
people do, but realistically, you're off. You're off work, And my family did great while I was gone overall, but coming back into it, I wasn't ready. I just didn't want to. I just didn't want to. And I'd been gone 8 days, man. I mean, that's just blows my mind just to say it. But we worked very hard to get to this point where I could take that time off. And I worked a little side hustle here and there to get some cash in to help pay for the hotel and all that.
Yeah.
But 8 days and coming back to this, I was just like, well, yeah, okay. That's all right. I did tell my wife that as I always do, if nothing happens this week, I'm fine with it. I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'll just come back. Even if they don't, maybe go to school, they need to go to school. But whatever happens, happens. I understand. This is difficult. This is not your daily. You're incredibly competent, incredibly capable, but there's, well, now three of them, and they outnumber you, and they all have different issues. So I didn't expect a lot, and I got more than I expected in a lot of ways, but also like the cat boxes weren't cleaned out at
Mm.
all. And I made sure to, honestly, because this is the kind of suspicious person I am sometimes, I made indications in the litter that if it had been used, I would know it. And nope, had not been changed. It looked like it had not been changed. And I'm like, we have two cats and we now have four cat boxes.
Yikes.
And I'm just like, look, this this should not be the way this is. They should be able to do one, maybe two if they're like very personality oriented. But and anyway, so
And
it
you're
came
allergic
back
to
to,
and you're allergic to cats too, on top of
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
Just a
yeah.
glutton for punishment. Okay.
No, my kids love them. They really do. I mean, they don't want to take care of them, but they love them.
Of
And I
course.
couldn't
That's how it always
imagine.
is.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's just, I set this up. I made this, but I also made, this is your job, kid. Every day you clean the cat box. So,
See,
but I
this is
think that's
why I
just
have
part of it.
one dog, and then they can have all the stuffies that they need as long as I don't get asked to have a
It's
cat.
a good point. It's a good
And that
point.
and that works out really well for us. So
Yeah.
I'm good there.
But yeah,
Yeah. I came back to a dish, or sorry, a sink full of dishes that I was hoping would have gotten washed. They were there when I left, just because I didn't get the time to take care of it beforehand. And Corey made it very evident that there's a high probability it wouldn't be done by the time I
It's
got
not
home
going to
either,
happen. Yeah.
because she was, struggling with just being in that space of, hey,
Hmm.
like, all right, I'm a full-time mom right now with
Yeah.
not doing
And
job, that kind of, and
solo
solo.
parenting, which
Yeah, and
is, sheesh.
right. And so like I came home and she was like, "I'm sorry." And I'm like, "You're fine. Don't worry about it. Like I don't care. Like I, it'll get done. Like you know, I'll get to a point where basically it was like Monday, okay, I'm gonna throw on the dad lounge and
Hmm.
I'll throw on my headphones and talk to the guys while I do dishes.
Yeah.
Like
Just
that's
wash
sort of
dishes.
the thing. And then it works. I mean, that's kind of become the normal thing, which is
Yeah.
it's nice. I mean, it makes the time go by. Like you can listen to the guys talk or you can talk yourself and then you can do laundry, dishes, whatever it is. So
Hmm.
it worked out really well.
Good.
Um, I was going to tell you before we get into actually talking about what we're doing today. Kaya had a pretty fantastic Saturday night.
Yeah.
Corey and I helped lead a marriage ministry at church, and we had a marriage seminar on Saturday all day with like 10 couples from church, which was really cool. And the kids were awesome. And so that night, the local card shop that we go to buy Pokemon cards was having like a trade show. So like you could go in and trade cards with different people, and it was a lot of fun. And so Ruby didn't want to go, so Hezekiah and I went and had a great time. And he ended up buying a pack of Pokemon cards. No big deal, right? Like
Hmm.
that's normal. What wasn't normal was the fact that he pulled a super expensive, sought after, one of 2,000 packs hit and pulled a God pack, which is
Nice.
like this amazing series of EV evolutions that are not cheap by any
Uh-huh.
means, but he paid, a very small amount of money to basically win a whole bunch of money in
Yeah.
cards and stuff. So, as a Pokemon collector as he was, he became very popular in that shop and was very pumped about getting these cards. So they're in a safe right now because the fact that I'm like, all right, kid, we're not touching these. We got to do something with them. So we took pictures of them and everything, but it was an exciting and very interesting, memorable moment for sure because like I've been collecting like sports cards forever and
Hmm.
to my dad really never went to the card shops with me, that kind of thing. That wasn't his thing. And this is a way for he and I to bond, and the same thing with Ruby and I. And
Yeah.
so it was a really fun evening. It was more interesting trying to explain it to Corey because she does not understand like card collecting at all. Thinks it's kind of,
Yeah.
stupid. But I was like, this is what happened. Because she was texting me at one point, was like, when are you guys coming home? Because we'd
Yeah.
been there for a couple hours. And I was literally getting ready to walk out the door when he was like, hey, I'm going to buy this pack of cards. So our entire evening just like basically exploded
Yeah.
after that. But yeah, it
Well,
was pretty,
congratulations to him.
pretty
Good
exciting.
job.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
it was really cool. So just a
Nice.
fun memory. Like I, would have never thought that would be something that, would happen. So it's like kind
Hmm.
of winning the lottery in a lot of ways.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My kid, unfortunately, is he joined the gaming club after school, and they
Okay.
played D&D every other week, which is cool for me. And he runs, or I'm sorry, she runs a game. Cool. Awesome. I can't imagine the chaos that that game involves, but okay, enjoy it, whatever. It wouldn't be a game I could play and not lose my mind. And then the alternate weeks, she plays Magic: The Gathering.
Oh,
And they just
yeah.
got their first pack that's coming out actually this week. Yeah, whatever. But they got it. They're being given a pack. Like, so somebody went and bought, 10 packs or whatever and giving one to each kid. And I'm like, okay, I don't like Magic: The Gathering because it's all consuming. And that's coming from a guy that does things that are all consuming, right? But I've been to like Dragon Con, and you walk into the room where they have 50 tables going of Magic games. And I've never one smelled humanity in such a way, because they have been there playing straight for 24 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, you see them crashed out in the corner or whatever. Sometimes they go to the room, but nobody takes time to take a shower. And in that
Oh,
huge mass of people,
oh,
that's my memory. Now I know that's not all it is, but that's my memory of Magic: The Gathering. And the other part is that it is truly, truly addictive. I
Uh-huh.
mean, once you get started, it is hilarious how much time and money people want to put into it. And like all the way, I mean, people my age, people older
Yep.
than me, still playing Magic and just like, this is the greatest game ever. I'm like, okay. And I told my daughter, I'm like, oh, I will support you as long as I can and as far as I can take you, you know. But that's the
Find
trials
some
and
really expensive cards and sell them, and that's how
yeah,
you're gonna fund this thing.
yeah, fund yourself, yeah. And that's the trials and tribulations of an at-home parent, I think, or any parent. You just find your kid finds something that they love that you may not really even understand. So I get you, Corey. I get you. And yeah. So anyway,
Oh, yeah. So exciting times, and I think it's just fun memories, definitely. Which kind of
absolutely.
brings us to our guest tonight or today, because our guest today is actually doing interviews with stay-at-home dads and
Yeah.
building a really cool, I don't know if it's like a research paper of some sort that he's working on. I don't know if that's
Hmm.
what it's called. I haven't actually had a chance to communicate with him the way you have, but it's interesting to like read his synopsis of what he's up to, and just the things that he thought and the things that are actually true.
Hmm.
And to me, like that's always the most exciting part, because people's assumptions of what a stay-at-home dad is versus what a actual stay-at-home dad is
Yeah. Yeah.
are usually two different sides of the coin a lot of times. And so to be able to basically break down those just stigmas, that like stigmatisms, the stereotype,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
that's it's awesome. And so
Hmm.
it's great to see that there's actually a study like this going on. So it was really cool to see, like when you sent me that thing about Mark Walker coming in to talk to us today. And
Hmm.
so he interviewed you, right?
Yeah, yeah. I went ahead and did his interview, and it was very, very well done. He was easy to talk to, which is, maybe that's me too, but I think he was easy to talk to. Had a lot of really good questions, had a lot of really things that he was just, you could tell he was interested and he was listening. And I love that about it because, again, he had some preconceived notions and he's learning, wow, that's not actually what life is all about as an at home dad. So, yeah. So
Awesome.
Dr. Mark Walker with the LSU.
Yeah, yeah. So we're gonna have Dr. Mark Walker with LSU. He's a professor of sociology there. We're gonna have him on here in just a moment and talk a little bit more about what it is that he's trying to uncover about stay-at-home dads. So we'll be right back with Mark. Become a member of the National At-Home Dad Network, an organization focused on providing advocacy, community, education, and support, connecting with households where dad is the primary caregiver of the children. We do this through our webinar and podcast series, mental health support groups, regular online social events, as well as our annual convention. The National At Home Dad Network is a 100% volunteer organization. Without the generous support of its members and the community around it, we would not be able to continue the work that we do. Becoming a member gives you access to past convention speaker presentations, the ability to vote for board members annually, and ensures that the organization's fees and bills are in positive standing. Oh, yeah, it should not go unmentioned that there is some cool swag headed your way if you decide to become a member. For only $35 a year, your membership provides you with the exclusive content only we can generate, and you'll be supporting an organization that benefits families all around the country and world. By advocating for them, offering them community, providing education and guidance, and supporting them to grow in their parenthood journey. And one last thing, if you contribute $500 or more, you will become a lifetime member. Not only will you receive everything already mentioned, but also a certificate recognizing your status and an exclusive National At Home Dad Network challenge coin with our trademark logo, Dads Don't Babysit. So, what are you waiting for? Become a member today. All right, and we are back, and we've got our guest with us, Dr. Mark Walker from LSU, sociology professor, and very excited to be talking to him about the research that he is working on. So, Mark, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you guys.
Yeah, no, definitely. I saw the bio come through for you and what you wrote up about what you're working on, and it was very intriguing to me. And Danny's like, I've already sat down with them and had a conversation and done an interview. And I was looking, I was like, oh, you're one of seven so far. That's awesome. Like,
Yeah.
so, but it's just it's interesting to hear when when college professors are working on doing these studies on stay-at-home dads, and that was sort of how things kind of got started for the National At-Home Dad Network, especially
Hmm.
Home Dad Con. Was
Really?
a very curious professor in Chicago wanting to sit down 30 years ago with a group of stay-at-home dads to pick their brains about what, where, why, how, and every other thing in between. And it was a one day a year sit down that they were doing, and here we are 30 years later. So the fact
That's
that
amazing. I did not know that.
yeah,
Hmm.
so the fact
That's
that
great.
you're digging into what would be basically a new generation of stay-at-home dads in some
Yeah.
ways is very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
It's a
excited.
big difference from, I mean, 30 years ago, obviously, there's so many things that are different, but it was really interesting to see the people he talked to. And it did start out with just a small group of at home dads and just the complete, they were just like fish out of water when you see him talking to them and stuff. And it's like, wow, I didn't, realize that this was such a thing, and you're so passionate, and there's so many of you. And something that you yourself have found so far is that there's such a variety, of why you do it and how you got into it, and then what you do to handle all of it, whatever you might be dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And it just was really cool. And like Brock said, that was the beginning of we have our annual parenting convention now called Home Dad Con. And we still have researchers show up, and usually they'll be presenting, which I love because I love seeing the results of all the work you're putting into it, just to learn
Mhm.
about, okay, well, how are my other fellow at-home dads dealing with things, and how do they, what's the average, home life like, what do you deal with every day, a day-to-day basis. So it's been really cool watching the progression, over 30 years, to see, not that I've been a part of it 30 years, but like looking back over 30 years.
Mhm.
It's been really neat. So it's going to
Yeah, I
be in
mean, that's
Chicago.
one of the yeah, one of the more striking things that I've found that question my own assumptions is just that there's so much diversity in stay-at-home dads, what their situation is, what brought them to being a stay-at-home dad, the way they approach it. I had this sort of particular idea of what a stay-at-home dad is going to look like, and that's one of the with only 7 interviews, I've already seen lots of different situations, lots of different stages in the process, for sure.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was kind of one. So I kind of wanted to get into that side of things a little bit, like from like the beginning here, what you talked about in your bio. So one, I'm curious, what was it that sort of brought you to this point of like, hey, like I want to study stay-at-home dads and interview these dads about what's going on. Like, where did that come from out of being a sociologist? I mean, sociology, of course, to study people and everything like that, but like
Mhm.
where did that come from to be like, I'm going to pick stay-at-home dads to study?
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, this is a pretty big pivot in my research. Prior to this, I did mostly quantitative research, statistics, survey work. And I studied how social networks affect your identity and how identity matters for mental health. But the thing that really started this was probably the first step was becoming a father, right? I guess I would have been 36 years old. I had my first kid and really started thinking heavily about fatherhood, what sort of dad I wanted to be. And that sort of got my mind on fatherhood, right? But the thing that really pushed me in this direction was having my second child, William. He was a very big boy. He was 10 pounds, 13 ounces. And my
Yeah.
wife had a really rough pregnancy and a rough birth. So she was on, she was on bed rest for the last couple months of her pregnancy. But even before then, it was really hard for her to really go out with the kids, be in the hot Louisiana sun.
Ooh.
She had them in September. So, the last 3 months,
so sorry.
4 months, yeah, of her pregnancy, it
You're a
was
monster for putting her through that. I just want to say that in case she ever hears this.
Hey, yeah, and I was, I'm a big boy myself.
Yeah.
I'm 6'4", and I'm the runt of my family.
Oh,
So,
wow. Yeah.
yeah. And I was 9 pounds, 8 ounces. I'm not as big as him, but still big.
Yeah.
So it is probably my fault. But yeah, so she was basically, I was kind of single dadding it for all told about 9 months to a year. And I always spent a lot of time out with my first kid, but I was spending a ton of time doing that sort of solo parenting stuff before my wife was always along with me. So I didn't run into as many things as I did when I was doing it by myself. But I just kept on running into people that were essentially telling me it was sort of like shock and surprise, lots of comments like, "Oh, you're in for it today, Dad," or, "Are you babysitting the kids today?" Or, older women that would, and I'm just doing my thing. I didn't feel like I looked like I needed help, but they would come up and sort of be like, "Do you want me to hold him?" And just like,
yeah,
lots of stuff like that, as well as, running into more structural things. Like, I got into trouble at the YMCA this is my daughter was younger, but we would take her to swimming lessons, and I would bring her into the men's locker room to change her. And probably the third time I did it, I had a YMCA worker come in and say, "I'm sorry, sir, you can't change her in here."
Right.
And I was like, and this is when she was 2. And I was like, "Okay, so where would you like me to change her?" And he was like, "Well, you could take her into the girls' locker room. Like, you want me to go into the girls' locker room?" He's like, "Well, you could take her into the men's, you could change her in the men's bathroom." And it was like in the locker room of YMCA, didn't have a changing table. I'm like, "You want me to change her on the floor of the disgusting YMCA bathroom?" So yeah, I mean, I just kept on running into stuff like this, and it just stayed in my mind. I just kept on, I am a sociologist, even though fatherhood and is not what I studied previously. It just sort of lingered there. And since my wife, since the pregnancy, now my wife's back in action, but that kind of created a permanent shift in our division of labor to where most, as far as caregiving goes, I'm the point of contact. I'm like the person that the schools are supposed to call.
Yeah.
It takes a couple of reminders.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So
you're definitely in it.
Yeah. All of these things are like bullet points of what it's like to be an at-home dad. It's great.
Yeah. If you were in a room with a bunch of dads in the network, everybody would just be nodding and being like, "Yep, experience that. Like, you are not alone by any shape, form."
Right.
Absolutely. Definitely. That's what I'm learning. Right. And so there were kind of two things that happened. Right. So I started getting interested in the research. I knew it was going to be a big pivot. I was kind of dragging my feet. But at the same time, I was looking for a community of dads that could give me, that talked about fatherhood, right? Like, talked about the business of caregiving and the struggles of caregiving. And so I went to Facebook for that, and I bounced around some men's groups, some dad groups, just straight up dad groups, and some single dad groups, which was like absolutely the opposite of what I had hoped it would be.
Yeah.
And then I ran into this smaller stay-at-home dad Facebook group, and I explained my situation. I didn't know what the language, like primary caregiving father, was like not in my vernacular at that stage, but I explained my situation. They let me in, and I was like, "Oh, these are the folks that I can identify with. This is where I'm going to get, men talking about how to get your kid to take a nap in, when they've, decided that they don't want to do it anymore, right? Or
Yep.
how to sleep train, or how, like, so I spent about a year in that group, and it really became clear to me that these things that I'm thinking about when it comes to sort of structural and interpersonal barriers to men providing care, that this was probably a key group to study when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sort of started reading and sharpening my skills on how to do these interviews, looking at the literature a little bit, and just decided to dive in. And
I wanted to ask you about that. You mentioned the literature. What literature did you come across that involved stay-at-home dads? Because there's not a lot out there, so I was kind of curious to know.
so there isn't much out there. And that's actually pretty surprising to me. Everybody that I've talked to about this project is shocked that sociologists in particular haven't studied this group very much.
I think it's
Yeah.
because stay-at-home
It's
dads are just discredited for being parents a lot of times, or dads in general.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'd say that they're discredited, but I would say that a lot of the literature about fatherhood is about presence, just being around,
True.
and you know, so there's not as much depth into caregiving styles, quality of caregiving. But there is some stuff out there, and a lot of it is not necessarily about stay-at-home dads in particular, but instead about, like, there's some work out there that uses stay-at-home dads to get at like new masculinities and how conceptions of masculinity might be changing and conceptions of fatherhood might be changing.
Mm-hmm.
There's some research out there that's about social support and social isolation. That's a pretty big theme within the literature. But the thing about stay-at-home dads, and this is I was going through your website looking at the statistics on stay-at-home dads, and just to see what you guys have there. And it seems like y'all are running into the same problem that lots of quantitative scholars are, survey researchers, is that stay-at-home dads are, if you want to study it from a quantitative survey perspective, very hard to define.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there lots of different definitions have been thrown around. So the vast majority of the research on stay-at-home dads is qualitative, sort of interview type
Yep.
of studies. But yeah, there's surprisingly very little research out there. I was kind of shocked when I was looking at, and it's like one of those things. I'm like, am I looking in the wrong place? Like, where's the treasure trove of this research? And if any of your listeners know where to find it, please let me know. I'm not
I mean,
above that.
I think
But
you're in the same boat that a lot of dads are in when it comes to looking for information about stay-at-home dads. It is very few and far between. I mean, one of our members, Shannon Carpenter, who is an author, he took it upon himself to actually compile like 50 some stay-at-home dads in a book called The Ultimate Stay-at-Home
mhm.
Dad Guide a few years back. Luckily, Penguin published it, and it's been readily available at a lot of libraries. And he's done a lot of interviews on national television about it, which has been really cool. But yeah, I mean, it's not available. That's why we, the National At Home Dad Network, the podcast here, our webinars and stuff, like, we're constantly trying to push our name out there as much as we can so that, you know, dads that are taking on the role of a primary caregiver have a community to be able to connect with, because
Mm-hmm.
so many times, and especially here just recently when we had the Home Dad Con in San Antonio a few weeks ago, there were so many dads who were like, I didn't know this existed. Like, this is amazing. Like, to be able to connect with other dads who are doing the same thing. You had dads who actually, we were talking about this on the podcast recently. There were dads who were like 20 minutes away from each other, didn't even know there was another stay-at-home dad in their vicinity. And they came to the
Hmm.
convention and found each other basically and was like, oh, cool. Like, I got somebody close by
Hmm.
kind of thing. And so, yeah, it's not uncommon to be that way.
Yeah, the interesting too about San Antonio, this is the second time we had Dr. David Lambert out, and he does a lot of the quantitative research that might be a little more interesting to you. Brock, you remember I saw his slides where he basically compared firefighters and at-home dads and had done
Hmm.
comparisons on different ways they look at things. And then he added in just I don't know. The third group is just dads in general, and I don't know what that. I don't remember the specific details on that, but he has been doing that for years. And actually, we had this is our second time he came out to Minneapolis 6 years ago, maybe 6, 7 years ago. But for me, seeing that data was amazing.
Hmm.
One, because of course, I never even looked for it, but I definitely had never seen it. So, but having him put up a slide back in Minneapolis and saying, look, this is what's going on. This is how many at home dads that we've looked at and what they're going through. And this is what the numbers say. This is what the data looks at. And I will say for some people, it was a little more difficult because he's a professor. And I don't mean this in
Hmm.
any way negative, but you get so excited about the data that you're sharing, right? You're just, and you end up going this, and you're like a dog running around with a ball or something. And it's really, you have to be kind of ready for a very excited, passionate professor to drop data on you, right? But I think it just speaks exactly to what you were talking about because there's really not that much in that area. He's the only one that we've been able to find, at least that I know of. I don't know, there's others maybe we've talked to, but I haven't heard of anybody else that works in that kind of research on being an at-home dad. So it's
Yeah. He
definitely
brings
lacking.
he brings in a group of stay-at-home dads from the organization to his classroom via Zoom once a
Yeah.
year to actually do sort of like a round table virtually with his class. So all of his
Oh,
students
nice.
are in there and they can ask questions and that kind of thing. And I think it's awesome because like it's one thing for him to present all this information to, a college student and then be like, yeah, sure, right, whatever. But then for them to actually like meet a stay-at-home dad and get information from the horse's mouth is
Yeah.
so much more
Yeah.
power to it, and it's been really cool because it's not the same guys every year either, which is really neat too. So you get all kinds of backgrounds, which is the other thing that you talked about, basically like not realizing these like the economic situations and just the different backgrounds of some of the dads. I know that's one of the things that I love to shock people with a lot of times. I'm like, hey, like, stay-at-home dads are like former military. They're former police, firefighters, they're former teachers, they're former rocket scientists. Like we've got, guys like that in the group, and then there's guys who are full-time ranchers down in Texas who are also stay-at-home dads. So, like their kids
Mhm.
go off to school, they're working, doing stuff on the ranch, and when the kids come home, like they're right there beside them after they get their homework done out on the ranch doing stuff, or on the weekends going to a rodeo and being up till 2 o'clock in the morning and that kind of stuff. So
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of different guys like that in the world of stay-at-home dads.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the one that is, I mean, and when you step back and you think about it, it makes sense once you know, right? Like, of course, it's going to be a broad array
Mhm.
of situations and types of men. But yeah, I'm going to listen back to this interviewing and so that I can remember the name of that professor because I'd like to take a look at his
Yeah.
research as well.
We'll send you, I'll make an introduction for you or Brock can one. So yeah.
That'd be awesome. That'd be great. Yeah, I mean, it's surprising that there's not more work done, but it's not surprising that there isn't more quantitative work done because of that issue of coming up with this definition of stay-at-home dad that you can apply in a survey setting, right?
Mm.
It's just you would have to have you'd have to create a survey to measure stay-at-home dads, right? Like
Mhm.
you'd have to especially make measures for it, and it's difficult to do in a nationally representative study, which is what sociologists generally want. because it's these big population centers that are gathering this data, and you have to like really make the case for why you want this way of measuring there. But the qualitative data is it's less of a problem for qualitative data, and there still isn't very much of that out there either.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a wide open field, and
Yes.
we'll send you a link to Dr. Lambert, and also Brock. We should do the carry with University of Connecticut, the survey that we've been doing.
Oh yeah,
Remember
yeah.
that one? Yeah,
I do remember it.
We started our own
participated in it.
survey 3 years ago, I think, and just basically doing that. We wanted to develop what are stay-at-home dads like? Where do they live? What's their situation? And just a little bit more quantitative research on what's the numbers today? What are we looking at? So, and I don't want to get really deep into that because honestly, I think our listeners will probably get a little, kind of glazed over if I go too far into that, because I'm really geeky and I would love it. But
we can geek out some other time about that.
Let's do that. Let's do that. But definitely, but definitely we'll talk about your study for sure.
Yeah. So one of the other things that I saw you're talking about in your study that you're working on is that, this idea of negotiating an identity with caregivers, that kind of thing. I think that's been a conversation that's been taking place in a WhatsApp group that I'm in for stay-at-home dads, talking about like losing your identity. What does that look like? How are you balancing that, that kind of deal. And I think that's conversation that even, we have in the podcast on a regular basis of like, hey, you need a men's group, you need a mentor, like you need to try to find a hobby, like, something that you can sort of separate from, just the life of being a dad kind of thing. And I think that there are guys they're dad that can do it. And then there are other dads who struggle to do it. And then there's some dads that it's not hard at all for them. It's no big deal. They jump right into it. So there's definitely kind of those different three categories of what it is. And I think it really just kind of comes down to motivation and just the ability for also to like just opportunities for it, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think
so you're looking for 50 interviews before you start publishing anything. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, so it's kind of an arbitrary number. When we do these qualitative in-depth interviews, what we're looking for is theoretical saturation. Okay. And what that means is once you get to a point in the interviews where people are kind of saying the same things that you've already heard. And there went my headphone. So there we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Keep going. You're good.
All right.
But you reach your point where things start getting repeated.
Yeah, where things start to get repeated and you're not really hearing much new. You're not really finding any new social processes going on. That's when you can stop, right? And sometimes that happens at 20, sometimes it happens at 50, sometimes it takes 70, right? Like it kind of depends on the situation. But 50's where I think things will start to be repeated.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's what I'm shooting for. I want to and talk to as many stay-at-home dads as I possibly can.
How are you coming into contact with these stay-at-home dads? How can a stay-at-home dad contact you if they're like, I want to be a part of this study? Or what does that look like?
Yeah, so I've been trying to recruit through these Facebook pages, including the National At-Home Dad Network Facebook page, and many of them, rightly so, have this no self-promotion rule. And I think that's right, because if you allow self-promotion to go willy-nilly, then all of a sudden you're going to have a bunch of bots on your page and it's going to basically destroy.
You got it. You got it.
I've been using that as much as I can, but if people want to sign up, if you're listening to this and you want to sign up for an interview, you can go to my website that I literally just built last week for the purposes of of being able to give you guys a URL you can go to sign up. It's markhwalker.faculty.bio. Okay.
Awesome. So I've got that link in here with my stuff. So we'll definitely make sure that gets in the show notes.
Excellent. Yeah. So yeah, that's been one of the challenges of this project is recruiting, because stay-at-home dads are a relatively small group.
They're relatively difficult to reach. They have variable schedules. And so, through my own personal contacts, I think I've only identified like 3 stay-at-home dads that I could
Mhm.
interview. So getting a wider net's going to be really important for me to do these interviews, to
Mhm.
complete these.
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, and I think that's one of the reasons why we were excited to have you on, because if anything, like being able to help
Yeah.
draw in some more dads to you to be able to get better information is,
Yeah.
like I said, we're passionate about it too. Like we want to make sure that that information's getting out there, and I'm not scientific enough to be able to put that together, and I don't even pretend to even think that I would be. So being able to have someone who has a bigger brain and knows what they're doing is always good to be able to just push information towards them or people towards them to be able to connect in that way. And that's the reason that it's the National At Home Dad Network. We network dads together, and I think that it fits right into being able to help in these situations. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and I just want to anyone who's to folks that are listening, what this interview looks like is it's a conversation, right? Like I'm gonna have a handful of questions that I'm going to ask you, but really the goal is to have a sort of guided conversation about your experiences. And so it's not like, you know, being interviewed by a journalist or a newscaster. I'm not trying to get any gotcha moments in. I want to learn about your experiences and understand the sort of challenges that you face and understand the how you are able to how you view yourself as a father, how that's changed since being a stay-at-home dad, and how you deal with, all of these sort of outside things that might create strain for you, like, you know, building masculinity in this role and
Right.
where that fits, finding a source of identity and self outside of caregiving so that you can sort of anchor yourself in lots of different places. So nothing to be afraid of. We can have a
Hmm.
conversation for about an hour, and then hopefully I can learn a bunch from those conversations.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that a lot, definitely. Danny, what was your experience like getting to sit down with Mark for the
Well,
interview?
I know this is going to shock you, but I loved it because I talked a lot. There you go. Yeah. But again, getting to I'm not in any way a scientist or anything like that, but I love data and I love just being able to look at where things are going in studies and focus groups and things like this. And I enjoyed it, not simply because I got to talk, but really because it was, like you said, it's more casual. It's like I just want to know what's going on and, what you're facing and what you're running into. And it gives us as at-home dads a place to talk about that stuff to a professional and not a therapist, y'all, just a professional person who would be able to understand and then can use that information to make our lives better, in my opinion. Every time we do something like this, every time we do add to that amount of data that's out there, I feel like we make it a more accepted thing in the world. And that's really, really important because, and Mark, like you said, one of the main things we find that we have an issue is that social interaction and identity and things like that, because it is still after, I mean, it's 30 years we've been doing this and it's still, you're a unicorn. You go into a community and you're like, oh, like you said earlier, I need to call the school needs to call you. Oh, okay. And I've literally had the school call my wife in her very, very busy corporate international don't bother me job and then come back and she'll text me and I'll call the school and like, oh, and you were supposed to call me first though, if I could just make sure you don't. And like, oh, is that what that red flag in the folder means? Okay, that makes sense. Now I know what that. And I'm like, what? It was a red flag on my folder to not call my wife and you ignored it. But being able to get that information out about what we experience, what we do, why we do it, which is very important for me, is going to help all of what we consider the brotherhood of fatherhood. Just that complete understanding of what not only just an at home dad, but fatherhood in general. And like you brought up, masculinity, identity. Am I still a man if I change diapers all day? Yeah, of course you are. It's just we've never been taught that men were allowed to even be a part of that. And I guarantee most of the time men would be willing to not ever change diapers and say that's women's work because it's gross and who wants to do that, right? But to get the reality of what it is out there, that I think it's amazing, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show, and we're going to do what we can for you on our social media and stuff to kind of get the word out for you, because it's very important. So anybody listening, go to the website markhwalker.faculty.bio and sign up. Get this. Let's get this done. We need 50 people. Come on, chop chop. I don't know if we have 50
Can I
listeners, but
quickly
we
say,
hope.
I
Are we
want to
doing a
say,
telemarketing thing now? What's going on?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
I quickly want to say a few things. So one of the things that I'm find that I think is going to be directly useful to stay-at-home dads, and in particular stay-at-home dads, is most of these interviews, stay-at-home dads are providing me with specific interactional strategies to deal with entering sort of mommy spaces, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the park, setting up play dates. And that's one thing that I didn't expect, that I was just like, you know, it makes me, I'm probably going to write a book just so that I can include those interactional strategies, right? Because I don't know if that would fit into the academic journal
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
guidelines, but I do think that like I'm learning lots of things, and um my best friend from back home, this is like some weird kismet, but he became a stay-at-home dad just about 3 months ago. And
Yeah.
so there are all kinds of resources and strategies that I'm learning from stay-at-home dads that I think will be useful to stay-at-home dads and new stay-at-home dads in particular. Also, I want to say, having this out there, I think that there is, and I don't want to get into this too deeply, but there's a bit of a despair epidemic that seems to be going on amongst young men and men at large. And I really feel that this work is important, and the work that y'all do is important, to give men a lots of different opportunities and lots of different ways in which to find meaning in life, right? It doesn't have to just it doesn't have to be through power and status games and employment, right? And I really feel like it's important for our society at large to provide lots of different routes to find meaning in your life,
Mm-hmm.
particularly for men and young men.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
And
Well said.
there's a lot of research about that part of it, but I won't get into it because
That is
I'll
a whole
geek
nother
out.
can of worms, definitely.
It
Yeah.
is, and it's an
That's
awesome can. It's a great can, but yeah, we shouldn't.
Yeah, we won't go there. But hey, Mark, thank you so much for coming on the show with us and talking about your research that you're working on. I'm very excited to see who all like steps up and takes on, being a part of helping give you information for what you're working on. I honestly, like, we'll just put this out here, even though it's like 365 days away, but literally 1 year from today is Home Dad Con Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
our 30th anniversary. And if you wanted to put that on your calendar and consider coming and hanging out with a whole bunch of stay-at-home dads and in person, it's definitely going to be the place to be next year. So definitely wanted to put that invite out to you.
So thank you for the invite. And I will say I just applied for sabbatical for the fall semester of next year. And I built that Home Dad Con into that sabbatical.
Oh,
So
nice, nice.
plans are already moving. I would love to go. I'm putting it at 95% likelihood. When you've got kids, there's always that 5%,
Yep.
but I'm planning on it. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually, I want to see, I would love to meet all y'all in public, in sort of face to face,
Yeah,
as well as just to see what the conference has to offer, the resources it has to offer.
definitely.
So
I know there was a dad actually on the national Facebook group that was just asking if anybody else was from Louisiana just like this past week. So
cool.
Yep.
there's some other guys down there in that area. So
Yeah, so I'll just have to shoot that guy a line and see what
yeah,
Louisiana he's from. For
There
sure.
you go. Definitely. Well, hey, thanks again for coming on the show. Much luck in just with everything that you're doing
Mhm.
with this, and can't wait to see what the final results of everything is. But yeah, for everybody else, we will talk to you all next week, and it hopefully will be a good week for you, and go away with a good weekend, being recharged, and come back, and we'll talk to you again real soon. So have a good one, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
I'm a dad, that's what I do.